welcome to the 2022 BIPOC Perioperative Leaders to Know. My name is Carissa Brewster, staff writer for Whitman Partners, and today we have Lucas Bonner, manager for sterile processing. He's the interim manager for sterile processing, at Cottage Hospital in Santa Barbara, California. Welcome, Lucas. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Cool. So my first question, we'll just start with what drew you to sterile processing for your career?
So when I started in sterile processing, I was about 20 years old. And I actually got there as a community service project. When I got there and I was working there, I was so fascinated with all of the facets of surgery. I knew nothing about it. I had come from a low-income family, so we knew nothing about it, didn't have the opportunities. But I continued to volunteer on my own. And one day the manager just came to me and she said, "Would you like a job?" And she says, "Do you have a car? And are you willing to learn?" And I said, "Yes." And when I got involved in it, there was nothing that they could put in front of me that I didn't want to learn. I went into the surgical rooms, and in those days, you didn't have to have a certification. They would teach you and grandfather you in. So I was eager to be a surgical tech. I was eager to be a sterile processing tech. No matter what instruments that they put in front of me, I was highly eager to just learn it. And that's how I got introduced to it.
Nice. And so have you had both interim positions and permanent positions throughout your
I
career?
have. I've had interim and I've had permanent. Some of my permanent ones were surgical centers, and they're volatile with the changing of everything. So the way that I actually got into permanent management was some of the doctors at the first hospital that I worked at. They branched off and created their own surgical center. And they liked my attention to detail, such as they would come to me and say, "Hey, we're going to start the surgical center. Would you like to come over and be a director?" And I was hesitant to do it, but they felt that I had everything that was needed. And I went and did that for 4 years. And when they were closing, one of the doctors came to me again and said, "Hey, you would be a great consultant." And so he actually sent me out on my first consultant contract, actually.
Nice, nice. And when you were director, you said that was at a surgical center?
Mm-hmm.
And was it over all of the sterile processing department there?
Well, it was over the surgical, it was over materials management. It was
Mhm.
over the sterile processing department. My job at the time was to order all of the instruments and supplies that the hospital needed,
Mhm.
in addition to hire, fire, train sterile processing staff. I was responsible for payroll, scheduling, the budget, all of that. I learned right away.
Awesome. We are, I guess we're 3 years into COVID, which is, I don't even know if you could say it went away, but um, from your experience, how has COVID impacted the way that you approach leadership?
So COVID has changed, whereas now, prior to COVID, managers really were more administrative in detail and handling the department and running the department. When COVID happened, everybody roles kind of intertwined with each other. The managers had to be on the floor. The managers became the educators. The manager became the runners. The managers became almost a tech. And since COVID, I think that has changed the dynamic to the point where managers are now having a hard time keeping everything staffed, because when COVID happened, a lot of the raises went out, the bonus money went out. They needed travelers all over the country, and now that we're kind of coming away out of the pandemic, the managers are having a hard time staffing because those bonus structures are not there anymore. And so, but the travel money is still out there. So a lot of managers now are finding themselves in positions where they have to be a tech, have to be a manager, have to go to the meetings, have to do all these different things. So now, I find a lot of managers don't want to be permanent managers anymore because it's almost not worth it. But when it comes to the patient, it's always worth it.
That's interesting. So people are finding they have to wear a lot of hats, more hats than they had to wear before
Oh,
COVID.
oh yeah, and so a lot of them don't feel fairly compensated. So, and those bonus structures are not there anymore. I've noticed a lot of that, a lot of vacant manager positions all over the country now, and they're not filling them because the pay structure is not there. And I think people got used to that COVID bonuses and the extra $10 an hour, and the travel packages that they needed in hard hit places, and those things are not there anymore.
Have you ever experienced discrimination in your career or witnessed discrimination, and how was that handled?
Absolutely. I've experienced it firsthand at a system that I was working for. I was called into the office once, and I was told that someone like me should be happy I have a job, and that if I'm willing to prove myself for 2 years, then I might make it where I think I should be. And I had to take that with a grain of salt, but it was my empowerment, because at that point I realized that when you're working for an employer and they view you in that way, and they're talking to you as if you don't understand, or if you don't have feelings, or if you're inhumane, or you're less than, you have a choice to stay there and accept that, or you have a choice to move on. I chose to move on because I know what I bring. You hired me based on my resume and qualifications. Clearly, you knew something was there. And now if you want to demean me, then that's not a relationship that I was willing to stay in. I think employers miss the mark, because when you have an interview, the interview is not just for the employer to find a perfect match. It's also for the employee to find a perfect match. And I think they miss that a lot, because they think that you can throw a salary and I'm willing to do anything, or you would be willing to just, turn on the employees and not educate. No, it's a relationship between leadership, and they don't understand that customer service begins at the top. And they don't understand that trickles down from every facet of the whole structure. And I think they forget that sometimes.
I think that it's hurting more for them now because employees have more power now after the pandemic, and so they're feeling it more because people do have choices on where they can work, for sure. Um, what are your thoughts on how, like, executive search firms like us, talent acquisition professionals, leadership at organizations, how can they promote and encourage diversity and inclusion in the operating room, which would also include sterile processing, just kind of that whole sphere?
I've been a part of diversity groups, and it was called Walk a Mile in My Shoes. And we all have cultural differences, but we don't ever take the time to understand it. A lot of companies give you this module, and that person or those employees are left to their own vices to figure out or make their own judgments based off this health stream or 10-second video. But there's never any interaction behind it. There's never any classes where they get to interact and learn another language or learn how they view different things, until something happens. And then here is a lot. Everybody has a health stream. But I think if employers actually took the time, even if they made it a day thing, and interact and had every race that they have at a hospital interact and teach each other something about their culture. Because I've been around cultures and I say, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. And I thought when you did that, it was a shot at me. And they said, oh, the same thing. And as we got to talking, we realized that we just didn't understand. But hospitals, organizations, they don't give each all of the multiracial, all of the cultural, they don't give us opportunity to intermingle unless there is a Christmas party or orientation. It has, I think that should be an annual thing. If it's an annual thing and it's an inclusion event, a lot of this would change.
Mm-hmm. What is your advice for people that aspire to be leaders in sterile processing? Thinking about your own path, is there anything you would do different? Is there anything that you did like, yeah, this should be something you should do if you were like mentoring somebody? What would you tell them?
Learn everything you can. Every hospital has leadership classes. They don't broadcast them. They don't advertise them most of the time. A lot of times they're in your health streams. You can take these certifications. The hospital pay for education. A lot of times they don't advertise it. You have to ask for it. The thing that I found with myself was because I was so eager, people were willing to teach me. And yes, there were times where they wanted to teach me so they wouldn't have to do it. And yes, there were times where someone would just dump things on you because you were eager. But you have to look at it as a positive thing. All of these things that are happening to me, I'm learning a new skill that if I can't use at this facility, I can take with me to another facility. And these are all things that you can add on your resume. So I would tell anybody, if you're new, if you're aspiring, take the certifications, take advantage of the classes, take advantage of the certifications that are offered, take advantage of the leadership seminars, and they will start noticing your face at all these things and they will start investing in you more and more. You just have to show the effort.
And did you have a mentor coming up at any point? And did you or have you ever mentored anyone yet?
Um, I've mentored about two people and they're both managers now. Um, but as far as myself, people, they didn't really mentor me. They more like said, hey, do this, do this, do this. And I had to figure it out on my own, even making the mistakes. But the one thing that I took advantage of when it came to ISHM seminars, AMY seminars, CPSPD seminars, when they wanted volunteers, I went. Because at those seminars and at those events, you're going to network, you're going to meet somebody that you can either, if you have an issue, you can call them, get advice, they can guide you. And a lot of times that works for me. So the more I met people, the more I wanted to go. The more I went, the better my career became. Because now these are people that says, hey, well, what are you doing after this interim assignment? Or we have an opening here. Would you be interested? Let me send you over to the. So it was good for me to network.
And as a mentor, would that be kind of one of the things you would tell your mentee? Like, what are like kind of three key things you would want someone to come away from being mentored by you?
Number one, educate yourself. Get any certifications, any degrees, anything that will help you stand apart from another candidate, do it. Number two, it's all about relationships. And what I mean by that is professional organizations, putting your name out there in a positive way, being known to other managers, when the reps, all of the reps that come in and do your in services, get to know them because you best believe they are mentioning your names at other hospitals. They are mentioning your names at other places. They speak highly of you. So, and number three, you have to build a relationship with your staff. If your staff love you, they will work for you. A happy staff is a productive staff. So you have to be a person that's willing to build morale. When I was an employee, when I saw my manager, I knew it was trouble. And your employees should never feel that way. They should be able to come and talk to you, open door policy. They should know that you're willing to help. They should know that you're willing to stand up for them. And they should be able to know that they can be educated by you. And so these are the things that I would tell a mentee.
We've as a country, we've experienced a lot of, friction and discord, for the last 5 years, I guess, maybe a little bit more. And a lot of it, usually it stays in the politics realm, but, the last couple of years it's kind of bled into the workplace. What are your thoughts on just how to handle those uncomfortable situations that are popping up more in the workplace?
I've been in an uncomfortable situation, and those things came into play. And number one, for me, I'm not here to be a cheerleader for any politician. Number one, I'm not here to celebrate or tear down any race for any reason. I'm here for the patients, no matter what color, creed, religion, sexual orientation. That's what I'm here for. And a lot of times I find that if you shoot that down in the very beginning, they don't come to you with that. It's when you entertain it, or they realize that they're upsetting you, or they realize that you have a reaction to it. That's when things start to fester. And the strongest thing you can do is stand your ground and disseminate it immediately. That's the thing. And when you do that, your staff is watching you. Your staff follows suit. Whatever it is, your staff will follow suit. So a lot of that could be cut out, but it only takes one to light the fire with the gasoline and react to it. And we know how that goes. So when you run a department, you have to run a department that none of that is tolerated. People only slide in what is tolerated. So if they know that there's repercussions behind it, they won't even try it.
What are your thoughts about how to address the staffing shortages and wow, it's nursing in general, but obviously that includes periop. What are some ways to shore up the pipeline, in your opinion?
So the last place that I worked, one of the things were unfair raises. Some of the workers that I saw that would work 12, 13 hours a day, that was really, really dedicated to the patients, they got the lowest bonuses. And I saw these employees get frustrated and move on. And I always tell leadership, the fastest way to lose a good employee is to tolerate a bad employee. There were employers where they were so desperate for employees that they let these employees do anything. And for the employees that were really dedicated, that was not fair. They did not like that. And I saw them leaving. And I saw this all over the country. I saw certain hospital markets, they were not competitive. So many nurses, they could be at one facility and they just drive 4 or 5 miles and they can get an extra $10 an hour. So hospitals, they were at the point that they were not doing employee retention very well. And I think that now that everybody wants to be a traveler, you got to get some permanency in, because with the paying all the travelers, you're cutting into profit margins. These are things where hospitals can turn that extra revenue into bonuses for the staff. Um, Sterile processing, a lot of hospitals, they don't want to pay a bonus for a sterile processing tech to maintain their certification, but they'll pay a scrub tech and make it known. So you have all these differences between the departments where these employees feel devalued and they're walking out of the door. They're voting with their walks and their actions. And I think hospitals are missing that.
Um, yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate what people doing periop, period, because I know that at the heart of everyone that does this job is they want to help people. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's my
Mhm.
pleasure.